There are two big political stories in Wisconsin today, right? One is today's Republican presidential primary, which has been won by Mitt Romney. The other, of course, is the recall election for Republican Governor Scott Walker, which is scheduled for June, along with recall elections for his Republican lieutenant governor and for a handful of Republican state senators. But beyond those two big overarching political stories in Wisconsin, there's something else going on in a very different type of Wisconsin politics right now that I think is worth keeping an eye on. Police in a place called Grand Chute, Wisconsin, which is near Appleton, say somebody placed a homemade explosive device on an outside windowsill of the local Planned Parenthood clinic on Sunday night. A small fire broke out when the device exploded, but it had burned itself out by the time fire crews arrived on the scene. Now, the FBI is reportedly helping local authorities with this investigation. Since the clinic was closed at the time, nobody was in the building when the device exploded. Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin says there was minimal damage to an exam room, and they say that the clinic has already been reopened. Today, local police in Grand Chute say they arrested a suspect in this bombing. Grand Chute police saying today that the arrest was actually made last night, but no charges have been filed. Meanwhile, at the federal courthouse in Madison, Wisconsin, a grand jury has handed down felony indictments against a man accused of having traveled from his home in Marshfield, Wisconsin, to Madison with the intent of killing doctors at Madison's Planned Parenthood clinic. The man's name is Ralph Lang. He was arrested in May, nearly a year ago, after he accidentally discharged a gun in his motel room. The bullet passed through the front door of his room, and then it crossed the hall and went through the front door of another room in the hotel he was staying in. According to the federal complaint filed against him, when police arrived and asked him why he had a gun, Mr. Lang told them that the next day he planned to go to the Madison Planned Parenthood clinic with his gun, quote, to lay out abortionists because they are killing babies. He said he was planning on going to the Planned Parenthood the next morning when it opened, and that he was going to find out who the doctor was and shoot him in the head. When asked if his plan was only to shoot the doctor, he said he wished he could, quote, line them all up in a row, get a machine gun, and mow them all down. Mr. Lang told authorities he thought everyone in the Planned Parenthood building should be executed. Those were Ralph Lang's beliefs and his plans that were interrupted when he was loading his gun, and it accidentally went off, thus introducing the room across the hall to one of Ralph Lang's bullets. In addition to the federal charges that came down a few days ago against Mr. Lang, he was already facing state charges of attempted first-degree intentional homicide. The specter of violence and intimidation being used against abortion providers in Wisconsin, in part because of the timing of the Sunday night Planned Parenthood bombing just before the presidential primary there, it has made extremism in the anti-abortion movement a small part of the context of Wisconsin's Republican presidential contest. For his part, Rick Santorum released a statement condemning Sunday's Planned Parenthood bombing, but he paired that statement, condemning the violence, with his own continued political attacks on Planned Parenthood. The statement said, quote, while we can and should work to defund Planned Parenthood and push back against government mandates that force Americans and religious institutions to violate their faith, violence against our fellow citizens has no place in freedom-loving America. So Rick Santorum, using the opportunity of the bombing of a Planned Parenthood clinic to inveigh against what he thinks is wrong with Planned Parenthood. And that is what you call classy with a K. Most of the attention on Wisconsin politics lately has been focused on Scott Walker's union-busting law, that being the reason Scott Walker is poised to become the first Wisconsin governor to be recalled from office ever. But even though the focus has been on the union rights issue, rolling back access to abortion has also been a major priority for Wisconsin Republicans under Scott Walker. Wisconsin Republicans were on the cutting edge of the defund Planned Parenthood trend. They passed a budget eliminating state and federal funding for Planned Parenthood clinics last summer. At the moment, a bill putting new restrictions on how non-surgical abortions can be administered in the state, forcing doctors to conduct state-mandated counseling of women seeking abortions. That bill is awaiting Governor Walker's signature right now. It's already passed the Republican-led legislature. The Wisconsin Medical Society, the state's largest medical association, has asked Governor Walker to veto that bill, saying it would infringe on the physician-patient relationship. The Medical Association says they're also concerned that doctors who fail to follow the bill exactly could face felony charges. They could go to prison. The legislature also passed a bill banning private insurance plans that are part of health insurance exchanges from covering abortion. They also passed a bill removing a bill that would remove information on contraception from sex ed curriculum in the state and requiring schools to teach abstinence as the only way to prevent pregnancy and STDs was also moved in the state. There was also a personhood bill introduced in the Wisconsin legislature this session, an effort to amend the state constitution to define a fertilized egg as a person, thereby banning abortion and likely hormonal birth control as well. Scott Walker, the embattled Republican governor, has not indicated yet whether he will sign the anti-abortion bill, the anti-sex ed bills that have already passed through the legislature on the strength of Republican majorities. But it should be known that Scott Walker is a man with solid and long-standing credentials in anti-abortion politics. It's how he started in politics. He led an anti-abortion group when he was in college at Marquette University. He's against all abortion in all cases, including in the cases of rape and incest. If you become impregnated by virtue of rape or by virtue of incest, Scott Walker believes the government should force you to bear the child that is the result of that pregnancy. Scott Walker was endorsed in his run for governor by a radical anti-abortion group called Pro-Life Wisconsin, and that doesn't sound all that radical by its name. But Pro-Life Wisconsin is a group that opposes not only all abortions without exception, but they also oppose all forms of contraception as well. In their endorsement of then-candidate Scott Walker, the organization said, Pro-Life Wisconsin Victory Fund supports candidates for public office who demonstrate a commitment to protect each and every innocent human life in all circumstances and at all stages of development. To be 100% pro-life is to know that a human life begins at fertilization and that there may never be a legal exception. The Republican fight against union rights in Wisconsin has drawn all the focus over the last year. But there is another Republican fight being waged in Wisconsin right now, the fight against access to abortion and birth control. And the next stage of that battle is now in the hands of Governor Scott Walker, a man who is 2 months away from an historic recall election that could remove him from office before the end of his first term.